at the end of the day, everyone's just a person. They're all just human. Leveling that playing field is incredibly important. If you're the CEO of X and I'm account executive at Y, I'm going to be on the same playing field. Let's deal as humans rather than you're my superior, I'm your subordinate. There's a deal that we were working, it was a very meaningful deal for our company. To this day, it's very meaningful for us. I said, well, we've been negotiating this legal agreement for 2 months with your competitor. We're at the finish line. And I hung up the phone. I call him again. I'm like, what if we were able to redline this entire agreement in 24 hours? So the 2 months of work that you've done will get done in 24 hours. And he's like, there's no way you can do it. And RGC and I spent the entire night. We got it done. And we ended up signing the deal. Call it perseverance, not giving up, not taking no for an answer, just not getting rattled. There's always a way. There's absolutely always a way.
All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. I have the joy today of sitting with one of my very, very best friends of, I was actually thinking about it before this. It's been about 15 years, which is half of my life now, almost half of your life.
A little older, Thank you for pointing that out.
Yes. Simonas Baxis, very excited to we've had I don't know how many conversations over the past 15 years of these in-depth one-on-one convos, but to kind of have it in this setting, I think will be a little different and a little fun. But let's jump into it.
Let's do it.
I want to tell everybody a quick story about Simon. One of the things that I've always loved and respected of you the most is how you go about and take care of your people. And of course the quick story I want to give is our most recent one to Lithuania. In high school for I don't know, I think back to high school, we were talking about taking a trip out to Lithuania and visit your homeland. And this summer, 10 of us finally were able to do so. And what the coolest thing about it, Simon's always been a giver and take care of his people first. And you could tell, and this trip really showed it, where all we had to do was buy a plane ticket and you had everything figured out. There was transportation, there was Airbnbs, there was dinners, there was you treated us like royalty. And if shit hit the fan, which a few times maybe it did, we didn't bug about it. You just stepped up and you just handled it and wanted us to enjoy ourselves. And, I think that although we've never formally worked together into the business world, I'm certain that you carry yourself in the same manner with kind of putting others as the priority and focusing on kind of giving and adding value first. And it's, I'm sure, a large reason why you're considered one of the, best business development strategists in the crypto space. And it's no surprise to me your success is beyond impressive, but also not that surprising to me. We always knew that you would make a real name out of yourself and be someone that kind of led people and had real impact. So I'm really wicked proud of where you've gotten today. I know it's just the beginning of it. And, I think what's going to be cool here and the focus on this show is to take the, flights, you're in a new country every single week and you're on stage and you're talking at conferences. I know that's awesome. And I know the successes are cool, but coming a little behind the scenes of understanding what actually went into that, and understanding that there's key inflection points and key things that you had to navigate to get there. So that's a little bit of what I want to unpack today. But dude, welcome. That's the last of stroking your ego that I'll do on this show. But seriously, from by my heart, you obviously are one of my best friends, and I'm very honored to have you here and excited to chat a little bit.
Yeah, amazing to be here and to do this. It's funny you say that because I was actually just thinking I've been told in relationships that my love language, I don't know how all 5 of them are applicable to business, but at least I think mine is acts of service. Yeah. And that's I think actually very relevant for what you're talking about in business as well, right?
Yeah.
If you're adding value, if you're consistently sort of serving others in some capacity. And that's been, I think, true my entire life.
Yeah.
And so, the Lithuania trip is maybe a good example of that, which, by the way, was, probably the most heartwarming experience ever for me. It was high pressure, which it may not seem to most, but for me, for someone that's from such a small country that no one's ever been to and few have heard of, bringing 9 guys from all over the world with a lot of judgment was, it's a high pressure environment. It was I got to make this trip perfect. I want these people to leave and love the trip and the experience that they had. And I think we delivered on that, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I wonder to your point on the service side, where, obviously I've met your parents and I've seen it from them, but where do you think that stems from? Do you think that's seeing how your mom or your dad carried themselves, something of upbringing, or if you were to think about it, where do you think that how you move in that way comes from?
Yeah, I think it's deeply cultural. Having grown up kind of poor in Lithuania, poor in the sense of like, I had everything that I needed to be a happy kid, of course, right? Um, but certainly not a lot of money, not a lot of ability to do things that I wish I could have done as a kid, or watch my peers do. Life revolved around helping each other, right? And sort of like figuring it out. Like I always say, when I was growing up, we had a very do-it-yourself mentality, right? Like there's no calling the plumber, your faucet's broken. Like you just figure out how to fix it yourself. You know what I mean? And so it kind of like revolves around this like doing everything yourself and helping others figure it out, so they don't necessarily have to pay for it, maybe because they can't, right? So like if someone's car was broken, they're calling my grandpa because my grandpa's a mechanic, and they're bringing it by, and it's one of my friends, and we're working on their car. Or when we were younger, I remember working on their scooters, right?
Yeah.
But always basically doing favors for your loved ones, for your friends, for even friends of friends, which are theoretically strangers, right?
Yeah.
But so I think it's deeply cultural.
Well, what I guess when you think of, because you moved for a little bit, then you moved back, but I would say you properly moved when you were what, 15?
15.
Yeah. Do you think that was like unique to? Do you think the country in many sense moved like that? Do you think that was like or do you think that was kind of more unique to your family, or do you like would you categorize like do you feel like Lithuanians as not to overgeneralize, but like it's something that you see that comes through in that culture overall?
Yeah, I think so. I think again, it has it's not all about that, but I think it is. If you think about the history of Lithuania being suppressed by communism and Soviet Russia from 1940 to 1990, the whole country basically was under the foot of this rule, and had to figure everything out on their own, right? And so I think that's embedded within. Like I always joke, when I bought a house in Dallas, right? I bought the house, and then I did most of the construction work myself, and my dad helped with some of it, et cetera. But we were doing like everything ourselves, and everyone was like, how to like do tile in the bathroom, like what I mean? So but like you learn these like skills because you have to do everything yourself, and that's like a lot of my friends in Lithuania, like they all do so much work themselves. Whereas nothing against the U.S. at all, amazing culture, but it's much more accustomed here to pay for those services. Yeah. They're services of convenience, right? If you look right now on your phone, you can call anything that you want, especially in New York, within like 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Hang up a TV for me, plug a hole in this wall. There's literally a service for everything, and everyone takes advantage of those services. Like not a lot of people actually take the time to learn these like basic life skills.
Yeah. It's interesting how that can be. I mean, obviously it starts from like childhood and learning and so on and so forth. I wonder like when you think of sort of how you move and operate today, what's another, I don't know, what's like maybe another like big through line that you draw from upbringing, parents, whether it's one specific thing, whether it's the culture, like what's another thing that you, I don't know, maybe rings in your head and you kind of, whether consciously or subconsciously, think with today?
I think one thing that I always bring up is sort of just the concept of having thick skin. Again, these are cultural differences, I think, but the way that I was brought up, like there were so many, it's not even hardships per se, but there was just like a lot of difficult stuff, and we were taught just to like deal with that. You don't scream, you don't cry, you don't anything. You're just like, that's just life, and you figure out how to get across that obstacle. And so I think now fast forward, whatever it is, 20 years later, that thick skinness, whatever you want to, but that is incredibly valuable. Like my schedule is insane. My life is extremely chaotic. Everyone knows this, but like none of that rattles me whatsoever, because you're just like, that's just part of it. Just roll with it.
Yeah.
Right. And again, generalizing, and this is not the case across everyone, but in the U.S., it's much more common to freak out, to cry, to oh my God, it's like everything's that's just like not how I operate, and I do attribute it back to that concept of just like being able to have thick skin and just like not let anything rattle you.
Totally. Yeah, and I think that oftentimes in life and business for sure, like our ability to tolerate a disaster and to tolerate pain and to tolerate difficult moments oftentimes is what determines, where we're going to land in an organization or on a team. And, there's always the people on a team. I'm sure anybody listening can think of it like if shit hits the fan at work or wherever it might be, they have somebody that they call.
Yep.
And it's like, well, why do you call that person? Well, I know that they're going to be able to figure it out. Well, why do you think they're going to be figured out? Because they just have a level head about it. Yep. And, there's no way, obviously, that you got to where you are today by not being that person, right? And needing to be that person that, like, can keep that composure, can keep that even keel. I guess a question with that, though, is, like, how, knowing that not everybody maybe moves and operates that way, right? And, like, you have that Eastern European, serious side of you, blunt side of you. Does that bite you in the ass? Have you had to change it? Where does that come from the other side and not play in your favor?
Honestly, probably romantic relationships the most, rather than business, right?
Oh my God, so true.
The lack of empathy, you're insensitive, et cetera. It's like, okay, come on.
Yes.
That has definitely come up many times. But again, just because you're not rattled doesn't mean you don't care. And that I think is like a big differentiation, right? So like I care deeply about so many of these things, right? There's a difference between just being completely laissez-faire and it's like, and more to your point, staying level-headed, figuring it out because you care, right? So again, the romantic relationship is like a common one. It's like, no, like I'm sensitive. I feel inside.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have a heart.
It's not darkness in here.
Yeah, it's not just a void here. However, that may not show on my, on my face or my emotions, right? But like we'll deal with it. We'll figure it out. Right.
And I think many times people look at that as like there's, people that play more of the emotional character in at a table, someone that plays more of the logical. And look, you obviously need both, right? What's your sort of, I guess, take me a little deeper on this. Like, what's your thought process? Maybe even bring an example to us of maybe something that comes to your mind where like chaos happened, something occurred, it comes to your desk, it comes to your plate, somebody calls you, runs into your office, whatever it might be. What goes on inside? How do you handle that? What is your kind of approach and thought process?
Yeah, I mean, I think plenty of examples, maybe tied back to, let's say, a complicated business deal. And I think I've told you about this one. So there's a deal that we were working at Layer Zero. I think this was probably about a year and a half ago. I think it was summer of last year, where it seemed like, everything was kind of going in our favor. It was at the time probably the most important deal for the company, and I'll maybe leave the names out of it, right? And we were working this deal, and we kind of had this gentleman that was sort of progressing the whole thing along with us. We felt really good about it. Then we started maybe feeling not so good about it, and then we kind of got hit with like, sorry, we chose someone else. And that was, I had probably been in the role maybe 4 or 5 months. So this was like my big
You're blowing
break.
your first role. You're blowing your first deal.
Yeah, it was like the first thing that I could like, this is why you hired me, or maybe this is why you shouldn't have hired me, type of thing. And so, so we got that, and I tried with this guy, and I've had a good relationship with him. And I called him another time, called him that night. I was like, what can we do? How can we change this? What else is there? Called our founders, and I was like, guys, I think we lost this thing. And they're, they're obviously disappointed, et cetera, but they're like, is there like anything else that we can do here? And I had known the CEO, who's a pretty prominent figure in the industry of this company as well, back from when I was at Google. And I texted him, I was like, we got to talk, and I wanted to catch him in person. He lives in California, blah, blah, blah. And so he was like, well, I'm flying to Austin, tomorrow, I think. And I was like, oh, great. Yeah, me too. Of course, we're not flying to Austin. Yeah. He's like, all right, we'll carve out, 30 minutes while there. Fine. And so I called Brian, our founder, and I was like, we got to be in Austin tomorrow. He lives in Vancouver. I was, I guess, in Miami at the time. He's like, fine, let's do it. So, we flew there, met with a guy, walked him through everything, and he was like, this looks great. I don't know, we'll look really seriously, because we put in a big commercial offer for everything, et cetera. Like, we'll definitely take it back. I mean, this gives us a lot to think about, right? And then flew back to Miami, call him the next day. I was like, all right, let's, what do you think? Can we do this? And he's like, look, I'm sorry, like it's super compelling, but like we're just gonna have to walk away. We've come so far. And I was like, what do you mean, like you've come so far? He's like, well, we've been negotiating this legal agreement for 2 months with your competitor. We're at the finish line. I was like, okay. And I hung up the phone. I call him again. I'm like, what if we were able to like redline this entire agreement in 24 hours? So the 2 months of work that you've done will get done in 24 hours. And he's like, there's no way you can do it. It's like 50 pages of like, I was like, we can.
Have you talked to your general counsel yet to verify this?
Absolutely not. But I just had a lot of confidence, right? And so anyways, long story short, he said, if we can paper this in 24 hours, it's yours. And our GC and I spent the entire night back and forth. And luckily they were also, actually leaned in. So their GC was on, and we spent 24 hours, taking a lot of, I think, concessions on that agreement, right? For the sake of getting it done. But we got it done, and we ended up signing the deal. Maybe 32 hours later, whatever that was, and it was a very meaningful deal for our company. To this day, it is very meaningful for us. And that was just like an example of, you could call it perseverance, maybe not giving up, not taking no for an answer, fine, but also like, just not getting rattled. Like, you don't just go and then mope around, like, we lost, right? It's like, it's fine. Like, what else can we do? Like, there's always a way. There's absolutely always a way, right? And so we were able to bring that home, and I laughed in the beginning because our CTO and co-founder Ryan, he was like, I don't know how you did this. He's like, you have earned one body. I was like, what does that mean? He's like, if you need one person dead, or if you need to hide a dead body, you earned one. I got you.
I got you. Wow, you earned your stripes.
Earned the stripe, earned a body.
Oh, that's good.
But yeah,
that's good. Yeah, it's like I always think of it as staying in the pocket, right? To throw like a football analogy, but it's like, I think that there's oftentimes when these things happen, it's so easy to like make this situation of it in our brain and just like make it feel and seem like the worst thing in the world. And I've had situations where somebody's yelling bloody murder, and like I dig in, talk to whoever needs to, and it's bad, but it's like very, very solvable, right? Or it's you can get the deal, whatever that might be. And I think it takes that right balance, right? To your point of this conversation, like there's a right balance of like being, the logical side being like, all right, dude, like what is actually the difference of like why you would go with them versus us? And then as well as the emotional side of like, how much are you being a nag to this guy? What's that line of like ruining the personal relationship versus like being respectful? And, especially in the world of like sales and business development, that's always a very tight rope to be walking. How do you bring in the relationship side to these things? Because one of the things that's always impressed me is the sales, sales is a broad terminology, business development is very broad. The world that you live in and that you've come from is at a very different sphere than what I think many other people are used to. And for context, at Google, when you're engaging in $50 million contracts and $80 million contracts and so on and so forth, these are much different than picking up a client for a monthly retainer of sorts. What's your approach, and how do you kind of bring in, obviously the relationship is really important, but as far as like actually adding value, trying to service and provide for these people, while also obviously you're trying to get a deal done, so there's some salesmanship there. How do you sort of walk that line?
Just got to be incredibly charming.
That's it.
That's it. That's the secret. No, I think the greatest skill, in my opinion, in sales, and this is what I try to look for, but it's incredibly actually hard to I think, to identify, let's say in an interview, right? It only really comes out, I think, across multiple conversations and time and situations, et cetera. But the greatest skill is adaptability. Like that, in my opinion, especially in sales, is the single most important thing, right? You got to be a chameleon. Like you got to shape shift with, like, given the situation, right? If someone's being, extremely friendly, you want to be. I mean, this maybe sounds obvious, but like a lot of people don't do it, right? I mean, like the classic, sales approach. I mean, you watch Wolf of Wall Street, right? Like they had the script, right? Just read the script. Yeah. That's all you do. Read the script, and it works, of course, but only to some extent. But if you can adapt to each and every single situation, the mood, the environment, that particular deal, the stage of that deal, the part of that relationship, like, et cetera. That's the thing that that I try to do every single time. And now it's second nature, right? You're not like, kind of looking for how am I going to adapt to this next sentence, right? But I think that is incredibly critical. And then also, again, may be obvious, but the relationship, right? It has to be, normal, it has to be friendly, it has to be like, not everything is about the deal, right? So like I talk to so many of these people, and you want to know what's going on in their life. You want to like ease the situation. Right? It's like you watch The Office a lot, right? Like Michael Scott like does a good job with this, right? like he knows everything, right? He knows like, there's like an episode where he's like, oh, she's 9 years old.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, yeah, she's in school. But like that stuff again, I mean, it's portrayed in The Office, so maybe obvious, but if you do that with care, not with the intention of like, I'm gonna please this person inclusively, but with like actual care, I think it goes a really long way.
Because people can sniff out when it's
fake.
You're doing this because you're trying to relate because you think it's going to make closing the deal easier versus like genuine interest. And that also like that's just going to come out through body language, tonality, like all these different things, right? So thinking back to maybe earlier in your career, like maybe some of the early days at Google, were there obviously some level of this was already natural to you, right? The ability to communicate, connect with people, etc. But were there any specific deals or situations that you feel like when you think back to like these key principles that you teach your team these days, like you pulled from one of these like early experiences with like, a deal that maybe you won or lost, but like really sort of showed you or really emphasized to you like one of the most important elements to this sphere of like enterprise level deal making and business development?
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, we're talking about deals, right? But it's not. I mean, Daniel Pink's book, right? To Sell is Human, right? Basically says like everything in life is sales, right? You're selling your mom when you're 9 years old that you need this cookie, right? Like, why do you need this cookie? Well, I need this cookie, and so like he says that everything in life is sales, and to some extent it is, right? So like I think all of this is very transferable. It's not just necessarily enterprise deals. I don't want to kind of make this whole thing about that. Which, by the way, my ex, who would literally say that all the time. She's like, not everything is like, this relationship is not a sales deal, Simon. Like, you don't have to. I'm not treating him just kind of, that was a common thing that was brought up. But the biggest thing that I think I learned, and I at UCF, I went to literally sales school, as part of the professional sales program, which was amazing. And we would do, these role play type interviews and everything with mentors of the program. So they were always like kind of senior people. And so you'd go in and you'd go in always pretty nervous, right? Sure, maybe because it's a role play, but also because the other end of the table is, probably somewhere more senior than you. It always felt like you're somehow trying to ask for something, and the accomplishment is if you get it, right? But you're like, but you must like get it from this person. And then at Google, for actually software sales that I did at Stack Overflow, and then I went to Google. Like it was the beginning of that career was like always that. It was always like, we're speaking to the CTO.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that I learned is at the end of the day, everyone's just a person. They're all just human. They all, they all go to sleep the same way. They all wake up the same way. They all have the same beer at 5 o'clock on a Friday or whatever, you know what I mean? Like just because, it's Sundar Pichai of Google, like, maybe does it on a private jet, but like still kind of this, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Everyone's human. And so I think that the biggest thing that I've learned is leveling that playing field is incredibly important. Right. So if it's a deal, if it's a relationship, if it's whatever, making this seem like you're not asking for something, right? But we're all just like, if you're the CEO of X and I'm, an account executive at Y, I'm going to be on the same playing field. Right? We're all just human here. So let's deal as humans rather than you're my superior and I'm your subordinate. And that has like tremendously helped me in my career. And that requires, of course, confidence. It requires subject matter expertise, right? Because if you can't speak fluently on the topic, then are you really on the same playing field? But like most of the people that I know or I work with or I've closed big deals with or etc., a lot of them are objectively much smarter than me and more successful than me. But it doesn't come off that way when we're sitting at the table.
Yeah.
And that I think is really important.
I think you said one important piece there is I agree on the leveling the playing field and everybody's human at the end of the day. I think there's sometimes people will hear that and be like, all right, then just like, treat them as a peer, treat them as just like another human. But it's not strictly a mindset, right? Because it to your point, the way that mindset even comes about comes from all the legwork that occurs before, right? How are you going to sit across the table from the CTO of an organization. It could be the biggest deal for your company, and convey that level of calm confidence. Well, you had to have done your due diligence, understand where your product sits relative to others, understand how good your delivery team is going to be, all the different elements to it, right? And actually like taking the time to do the research and become an expert enough to be able to have those conversations, right? Because there's always going to be somebody that knows more than you about a specific topic, right? Yeah. Obviously. And that's where I think I always thought in the sales world, the best players there, adaptability, yes, also came from the ones who, stage one is just like absorb, discovery, learn, ask all the questions in the world, and so on and so forth, right? And so I say all that to say you were how many years at Google? It was 7 years at Google, and that was role one. What was role one there?
Like pure inside infrastructure sales.
Infrastructure sales to like enterprise cloud sales, right? To then really helping lead and open their Web3 world and branch. And then you step into this, you get hired for this very important job at Layer Zero, where Layer Zero already at the time was a pretty well-known product and brand in the space. You're stepping into a really, critical role there. How, for someone that's like you, that's stepping into this role, there's, they're putting a lot of trust in you, a lot of investment in you, and so on. I remember the early days there, right? You were working your butt off, but how do you kind of approach stepping into this responsibility, understanding there's a lot of investment and expectation out of you and out of yourself, and, take yourself from day zero to starting to actually lead and help bring in new business and close some of the biggest deals for the organization and so on. Like how did you kind of approach that, stepping into an organization like Layer Zero?
Yeah. 7 years at Google does actually teach you a lot, but you don't really realize it, which is interesting, right?
Like when you're there.
When you're there, yeah. You're just like, well, I'm just doing a job.
Yeah.
But if you care about the job, then you're observing all these things of how this world-class organization operates. Simple things, but you do observe them subconsciously, I think, right? So one could say that if I spent my career mostly in like tech sales, my main expertise is tech sales, but that's not actually entirely true, right? Because if you're paying attention to everything that this world-class organization is doing, and you're learning about the operations of it all, what's good, what's bad, you're maybe an expert in the product that you're selling, but you also start becoming an expert all of a sudden in consumer products like Google Search, and all of a sudden you're we also do self-driving cars, and so if you're actually paying attention, you're learning a lot of things, but you're not noticing, I think, as much. And so to your point, when I got hired to lead the global business team at Layer Zero, it was a pretty big jump from a career perspective, right? Like I didn't really manage like a big team at Google, and by big I mean like literally didn't manage a team, and here I am basically stepping into this global role for a $3 billion startup that's backed by the biggest investors in the world, A16Z, Sequoia, PayPal, etc. And so while it was an amazing opportunity, there's certainly a little bit of imposter syndrome there, right? Like I'm this 30-year-old kid that's like showing up here from Google, and I remember I inherited a team of 4 people, 5 at the time, and a week I think before my start date, the HR person at Layer Zero put time on my calendar. She's like, we should talk about your team. I was like, okay, that sounds great, and she walked me through this like presentation of like basically here's every concern that your team has with you coming in as their boss, and it was a pretty like long list. It was like, I mean, and we went through that in like 40 minutes. I was like, I don't know what I signed up for. Like these people hate me already, and I haven't even like shook their hand yet. And so there was a lot of responsibility and accountability sort of stepping into this, and it took a little bit of time to earn the trust and build the relationships with the team and everything, especially the people that that worked for me. But then very quickly I started realizing, I was like, okay, so yes, Layer Zero is successful. Yes, you're 40-something people and you're worth $3 billion. You've come this far, amazing. But also I was like, man, there are so many things that you guys have absolutely no idea how you're doing. And I didn't realize that I had the sort of the experience to fix those.
Because those are kind of the norm at Google.
Right, because you're working at a world-class organization where like world-class is the norm.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's the norm everywhere else, right? And there's like simple things. I mean, you talk about like running a sales team. You know, our CRM when I came in was literally like a list of accounts in a spreadsheet. And I was like, that's the CRM. Okay, like clearly we got some things to fix. And so like, and you know, the concept of like OKRs, for example, at Google is incredibly well known for implementing, right, and doing so very well. All these like operational aspects of how to like properly run, again, not just like the business arm, but the entire company. There were so many things that I started feeling more and more comfortable. I was like, oh, I know these things. It doesn't seem like these people do, you know? And now that gave me sort of like this level of confidence, like, okay, like I'm going to try to bring the best of what I've learned into this organization. And, you know, fast forward 2 years later, there's a lot of things that are now company-wide at our company that I brought over just for my little team of 4, right? That is now 22 globally. And our company is no longer 42 people, it's 160. So we 4x, you know, in 24 months. And a lot of that I was able to bring, which then, you know, I think, again, instilled a little bit of confidence. Like, okay, like, this is a lot of responsibility. I haven't done this before, but I know a thing or two. Like, I can be valuable here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I feel like that's a very common trend of you don't, until you get like a fresh perspective on something, you don't kind of like understand how special or meaningful or important that it truly was. And obviously at Google, it's like, you know, such a well-oiled machine that like things just operate the way they are because that's how they operate. And then you kind of step into this other world, and outside looking in, you're like, damn, this is a crazy valuable business, obviously proven themselves. But like, you look under the hood, you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
I'm one of the things that I think that's interesting, and I would say you're a unique guest here, A, from our personal relationship, but B, I, you know, generally I'm my interviews and the people I'm interviewing, it's they're talking about this, how they started their company and this like entrepreneurial journey and so on and so forth. And I'm interested, like you've taken this path where you actually started your first company you started was actually what we were in, was it end of high school or was it beginning of college?
Which one?
Unisuit. Yeah,
College.
the first real business. Yeah, there was all the good stuff in high school. Yeah,
college. Yeah,
Unisuit days. Yeah. So for context, right? Freshman year. What was this?
Freshman or sophomore? Yeah.
So this was a sophomore year. This was a onesie, basically.
Giving it all away. Yeah, yeah.
And I remember at the time I was like I didn't fully like, you know, I was focused on like partying and having fun, and like you started this like product in this business. I was like, what the hell? I was envious. I was impressed. But what I'm getting at is you got into you became an entrepreneur early, and I would still consider you. I mean, you have so many of the characteristics of that, but you know, you are a very high level employee at a very, very large, very impressive business. I think there's some people in the entrepreneur world that like look at, they think of working a job, blanket statement, as like, I don't want to do like a 9 to 5. And it's funny. At some point I think I had the same like thought process, because I just correlated like having my own business with like freedom and financial freedom, time freedom, and so on. But you know, you are a walking example of you know, you are successful in all the different manners, in a slightly different path. How over the years, even today, how has that, I guess, how do you think of that? How do you think of the world of like being, you know, a high level employee at a business, working for founders that anybody would probably give to work with, versus people that are starting their own business? And like, when you're thinking of this sort of success and freedom and all this stuff, like how do you think, I guess, of that world?
Yeah, it's funny, by the way, anecdotally, you know, talk about the first business, and I actually don't even fully remember this, but Makoto, who you met, my cousin's husband, always tells the story when we talk about entrepreneurship. You know, he had a real estate business in Chicago when we briefly lived there, and I was, you know, I must have been 9 or 10 years old. You know, him and I got along very well and spent a lot of time together. And he was like, you know, you should, he's like, you want some work? And I was like, yeah, would love to. And so he basically gave me, like 150 flyers basically for like real estate to pass out in Hinsdale, Chicago, in this neighborhood. And he's like, here's like 150 or 500, whatever it was, but it was a decent amount. He's like, when you pass these out, and he's giving me like $2 a pop or something, or $5 a pop maybe for each flyer. Pretty like good.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want to take the couple weeks, whatever, pass these out, and then and then we'll see if we can do more. And again, I don't really remember this, but he kind of always tells the story. He's like, apparently I called him from my mom's phone like 24 hours later. I was like, I need more flyers, and he's like, what do you mean? Like, I gave you so many. Like, how could you possibly pass out so many flyers? And I was like, well, I gave $1 a pop to all my classmates. They passed them all out, and now we need more.
Oh, I love it.
And so, I guess it was kind of deep there from the early days. But I think in terms of entrepreneurship, and so there's that kind of DNA there. Maybe that was early. You pointed to the fact of opening up a company in college, but the way that I think about it is it's all about sort of the opportunity that is there. Like I always say, like a lot of people think or ask me, like, why aren't you a founder? And I just sort of think that I don't want to be a founder just to be a founder. Like it has to be very opportune, intentional, etc. Right? And so the company in college was exactly that. There was like this moment in time, and I met a person that kind of had a connection to some manufacturers, and there was this idea, and all of a sudden we're like, why shouldn't we do this? And so we did it, and it was cool, and it was fun, and it was great, and it was an amazing experience, right? Then kind of like pursuing all the steps in my career, like I kind of look at them as entrepreneurship in itself, like you're sort of like finding the right opportunity and making the best out of it. And so the jump to to move to New York to like a Stack Overflow, but then like 12 months later leave everything and move to to Austin for work for Google, etc. None of that is for me is about like 9 to 5 versus not, or like freedom versus not. It is objectively, by all accounts, the right thing to do in that moment, right? Like all of those decisions felt perfectly right. There was never a doubt. It's like, yes, this is what I should be doing right now. The layer zero, like I was at Google for 7 years. I always say there were so many opportunities for me to leave throughout those 7 years, especially in the crypto industry. Like, when you do crypto at Google, you're like the prettiest girl at the dance. You know what I mean? Like everyone wants to dance with you. Everyone wants to talk to you. You're like, you represent Google Crypto. I am a crypto company. I want to do a deal with you. So you have so many of these opportunities to get to know the most important people in the industry, which then comes with job offers, et cetera, right? So I had a lot of opportunities. About some of them, I would call you and be like, hey, I think I got this, thing.
I remember you even being like, there's like, some of my connections are like, go start something, tell us what it is, and like we'll write you a check, and like we want in. And like there was the opportunity. I definitely saw this time period where your opportunities just opened like crazy.
There was a ton of them, and I had the same exact thing happen to me where a venture capital firm out of Austin, one of their partners was like, whatever you want, we'll fund it.
Yeah.
And somehow it just didn't feel like the right thing. And for example, when I got the offer from Layer Zero, it felt I didn't have to call a friend. I didn't have to call a mentor. It was like, yep, this is it. This is the right people, the right opportunity. Everything smells right. And we signed the offer the next day, basically. There's no dilly-daddling. And so when I think about entrepreneurship, like I think I probably will, hopefully, or maybe not hopefully, I don't know. But there is probably that in my future of being a founder and leading some company, et cetera, but only if it's the right thing. Like I do not believe being a founder just to be a founder. Like that in itself to me is not like a good enough reason to go have my own company.
There's no it's very empty. It's like it's more attached to like the concept and the I don't know, the external like sentiment more than like what are we actually trying to do here, right? I also think what's interesting is the space that you're like, we talked about this, but like the crypto world as like it's becoming less of its own bubble, but it's still its own like bubble. And I think even for many years it was very, very much its own bubble. Like I guess for you, as you're going to, you go to all these different conferences and so on, and now things are getting to the point where it's becoming far more mainstream. We're seeing like the type of engagements and the type of deals that are happening with, obviously all the institutional banks and so on and so forth. And you guys are very intertwined with many of those. Like, was crypto what was it about crypto? Maybe what is it today that feels so right and in line with what you're looking to accomplish and do? Is it what the technology stands for? Is it just the more of like a there's good people in it and you like the people that you're working with? Is it like, yeah, where does that come, I guess, come from for you?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think everyone can acknowledge that it's a crazy industry, to say the least, right? There's a lot of anarchy there, especially in the early days. And funny enough, as obviously you and I joke about all the time, our friend Trace was, the first one that really got whiff of Bitcoin in 2013 when we were in high school, right? And told us about it. And, we didn't do anything.
Nope.
And we're still working. So, obviously, right, we didn't retire off of his idea, which we could have, right? I mean, even a simple $1,000 back then would have taken us very far. And so it's very interesting, I think, that I'm the one that ended up in this industry, like out of him or kind of anyone else in our friend group. And I'll get to sort of some of the things about the industry, but again, it goes back to the same exact point that I was making, which was it was an opportunity that presented itself that that we decided to take. And so like how even though I was aware of crypto in 2013, I didn't really do anything with it. I mean, I read the white paper, knew kind of what's going on. Never really invested up until probably 2017, 2018. Still didn't do much with it outside of just like, okay, this thing is interesting. It's getting more legitimate, let's say. And then the way that I got close to it was I was doing sales at Google. And one of the biggest deals that I started working from a cloud perspective was with a crypto company. And we worked, and this was Hedera Hashgraph, and we worked that deal for probably 12 months. And as part of that deal, it made me get closer to the industry and sort of like understand what's happening there. It also made me, as we were trying to close it, there was like bespoke things that we had to do sort of on behalf of Google to like make that deal a reality, which then also introduced me to some people at Google that knew the subject matter. And we ended up closing that deal. That was great. And then all of a sudden we became experts on like how does Google work with crypto companies, because it actually wasn't being done. And we did a couple more of those type of deals, and all of a sudden my colleague and I became like subject matter experts on crypto at Google. It's like, who knew? It's one of like the largest tech companies in the world. Surely we're not the crypto experts here. Like there's got to be people that know this. And then there were people that were way smarter on the subject, but no one was actually able to like do something with it. And so you talk about entrepreneurship. Yes, I was at Google, but we decided to like start the crypto team. We're like, there's an opportunity here, and we see it, and we'll become entrepreneurs within Google. And we spent 12 months basically pitching the idea of starting this team to a bunch of executives across the organization, which was very painful, because there was either a lot of education that you had to do. People didn't understand it, didn't like it, thought it was taboo. Like, I mean, there's this 2018, 2019. So crypto wasn't that hot yet. And there was so much, patience that we had to have. And by the way, keep in mind, we have like our regular day jobs. So this was like a side quest, basically, right? That we were like trying to start this team. And we were getting so frustrated. We're like, come on, like we got to do this. And I remember, I'm kind of taking us on a tangent here, but I remember there was one of the vice presidents at Google that we pitched this to, was probably the most understanding person in all of this. And he was like, this all sounds great. I like it. I like crypto. I see the revenue opportunity. We put some projections together. We're like, this could be like $1 billion business at Google. And he goes, look, $1 billion sounds great, but our market cap is $1 trillion. He's like, you make one wrong headline with this crap that you're doing, and you move my stock price by 5%. You know what I mean? You just lost me $50 billion. You know what I mean? And I was like,
fair point.
That is probably the best objection we've gotten on this thing so far. But the point is, like, we kind of like saw this opportunity and everything kind of aligned, and we eventually got the green light to start this team, and we basically ran a small company inside of the Google umbrella, and got sort of closer and closer to this industry. And it just, at the time, it was almost like kind of like the early AI days, right? It was like it's chaotic. It's a young industry overall. It's completely disorganized, right? But it was this like emerging technology that was interesting, that could truly, I don't want to be cliche, change the world, but could kind of change the world, right? Like at least change the financial system of today. And, it seemed like it then, and it's proving to now, like it is changing the financial system, completely fundamentally changing the financial system, right? You look at someone like Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, right? In 2021, he was saying this is like fraud. In 2024, he won't shut up about tokenization and how like the entire world will be tokenized and everything is just far better, comparing like the traditional financial system to like, you know, like a horse and buggy to like the internet, or that is crypto, right? So like it has fundamentally changed. And so I think this is a very long-winded way of saying like what attracted me to the industry. It was like this, you know, this opportunity to make this emerging technology go mainstream, outside of it being, you know, lucrative and fun and et cetera. Like it's you know, it was messy then. It's way less messy now, and it's just been amazing to kind of be a part of, you know, making this industry legitimate. Yeah. Honestly. Not just like about, you know, how do you 100x on a meme coin. Like that's, you know, that's what a lot of people associate crypto with. But to your point, like we work with BlackRock, with JP Morgan, with PayPal, like all these companies that are like, you look at things like on your phone right now, like you can take your Venmo balance, one click convert that to PayPal stablecoin by USD and earn 4.5% on it. Like that's on your phone right now. Most people don't even know that. Our technology powers that stable coin, right? That's in Venmo, right? And so like you're truly now seeing this like fundamentally change how humans transact and how they earn and all that.
It's I also think that one of the challenges is there's so, just like any emerging industry, there's the, you know, you could have like 10 wins and then you have one negative headline and one bad thing, and you know, half the people are like, I knew this was Fugazi. I knew this was BS. But even working in the industry, from your point of view, how do you sort of approach like really drawing this line between something that has some serious legs and something that's actually differentiating, and, you know, strip back whether it's crypto or not, but I think just business overall, there's one of the skill sets I think is figuring out like what ideas, businesses, new products, technology, whatever, actually are creating some level of differentiation and change versus things that are it's a little bit just more lipstick than actual like substance. When you're looking at where the industry is going, where it has come this far, and the different players and the different angles that people are trying to kind of connect into the industry, and you even think of like what Layer Zero is doing, like what's sort of that edge, I would say, that whether it's what you guys are focusing on or whether it's what you know, you think the most influential technologies or businesses are focusing on, like where do you see the future and the critical differentiation is really like focused in? What sphere of the industry?
Yeah, it's a loaded question. There's a lot there. I mean, look, you know, first of all, right, like if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. That holds true in this industry, right? So a lot of these things and to be fair, a lot of people have made a lot of money without doing much in the industry, but also a lot of people lost a lot of money. And so, you know, there's a lot of noise there. And in general, like, you know, the biggest problem with this industry is it feels like, you know, every time, if I can say we as an industry, but, you know, we as an industry take one step forward, we like take two steps back, right? Because there's always something that, and because I think, you know, perspectives and motivation are so skewed by the fact that there's so much money to be made, it gets rid of all the sort of like the normal principles of which under you should operate a business. You know, people can only see dollar signs in their eyes, right? Like how do I maximize? How do I go 100x here? And so that's why this industry has had so many downfalls, right? I mean, you talk about the whole FTX thing, you know, on one day, like we were in the Bahamas, we were meeting with Sam Bankman-Fried, having lunch at the table, talking about, you know, how Google and FTX can work together, and you're sitting there and you're listening to this person, and you're like, you're almost, I think you're tricked, you know, by the aura that exists, right? Because he's on Forbes magazine and he's on stage with Giselle and Tom Brady, and Steph Curry's walking by, like literally, you know, like by our lunch table, and oh, hey Steph, hey Sam, you know, and so you're completely blinded by this entire persona. Right. And you know, you talk about like how to differentiate like what's real and what's not, and you know, we were sitting there, we're like, this feels pretty real. You know, like I'm not gonna sit here and tell you like that we knew it. He was, you know, And then, we actually did go down the path of like truly evaluating, for example, FTX to work with. And we did a lot of due diligence, and frankly, thank God for some of the folks I think at Google that is their job to do due diligence. We ended up, walking away from the deal with FTX, and Sam was giving us the world. And we ended up choosing Coinbase, which is, public company, a regulated company, and announced the partnership. And I remember Sam called us. We were on a call with all of our leadership, basically like 3 weeks after the announcement, like, what the hell? Like, I thought we were going to do this, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, I don't know, something doesn't feel right here. And then a week later, the whole collapse of FTX happens, and, he's going to jail, basically, right? And so, I guess the point I'm trying to make is there's absolutely an insane amount of noise there, and you can't be tricked by dollar signs. Is I think really the answer, and you have to look at the sort of the long-term sustainability of like these businesses and these innovations within, right? And so like we try to do that at Layer Zero. I tried to do that when I was looking to join a company like Layer Zero, right? Like it kind of passed the sniff test of like, okay, this is like the real thing. It's real technology. It's a real business. It's like people that are ethical and moral and like building for the future, et cetera. But it's really easy to get lost in all of that. I think to answer maybe the second part of your question of like where all of this is heading, I think there's been a lot of things that have been being built on blockchain, right? Let's put the traceability of coffee beans that go into your coffee mug at Starbucks on a blockchain so everyone knows that it indeed came from this farm in Ethiopia. Yeah, okay, like I guess kind of cool, but like no one really cares, you know what I mean? But if you look at like, if you read the Bitcoin white paper from October 2008, what Bitcoin was built to be was a peer-to-peer payment system. That was what it was built for. To transact between parties across the world without an intermediary. That's all it was built for. And it took so many shapes over the past 15 years. Like I said, put coffee beans on a blockchain, to gaming on a blockchain, to, this, that, the other. And Bitcoin itself actually proved to be not a good mechanism for peer-to-peer payments because it proved to be slow, volatile, and expensive. And so now something like Bitcoin is being compared to more like digital gold, right? A store of value. But that underlying technology from a peer-to-peer payment system is incredibly innovative, right? Like I always say, the concept of moving value digitally, crypto is really the only true representation of like cash under your mattress. What I mean by that is if you have cash under your mattress, that is actually your cash. And if I want to give that cash to you, I will give it to you, and it will be mine until I give it to you. And as soon as I give it to you, it's yours. But if I'm in New York and you're in Florida, I can't really easily give you that cash. Right. So what do? I either go to the bank and deposit the cash. Now that money's no longer mine, it's the bank's. And whether I deposit it $100 or $50, the bank can say I deposited $1 because it's really just an ATM screen that's going to say thank you, right? But it's now the bank's money. And now I'm going to initiate a transaction. Let's say in the traditional world, I'm going to do a wire transfer, God forbid. That's going to take you 3 days to get that money in Florida. Nowadays, let's say you'll Venmo me, right? Which is pretty quick and easy. It's not so easy though if you're going not from New York to Florida, but you're going from New York to the UK or the Philippines. There is no Venmo that is, you know what I mean? That is cross-border, right? And if you do want to do that wire transfer, it's going to take, also 3 days and probably cost you $50. What if you're sending like 2 million? You can't even send $2 million because the bank's going to call you and be like, what the hell are you doing? You can't move $2 million into the Philippines. Like, what's happening here? And so the point I'm getting across is like with something like a stablecoin, a token, when it is in your wallet, it is yours. It is the same exact thing as the cash on your mattress. It is actually yours. And when you click send to the Philippines, there is no intermediary that ever takes ownership of your money. It's not an IOU. It is like the actual cash that within 10 seconds ends up in also a wallet, another mattress in the Philippines for 2 cents or whoever it is, right? Like transactions are super cheap on blockchain. So the movement of money, payments, like my point is like, it started there, it had all these shapes, and it basically has now come back to exactly what it was started for, which is the financial world. And the movement of value, and the movement of money, and payments, and remittances, and cross-border value movements, et cetera. Like that is the obvious thing that this has product market fit on, that like unequivocally is 100x better. Like it is just exponentially better, and like everyone can like agree on that. And that's like where that's going. Like I don't care about the coffee beans on the blockchain, but that is true. That is great. That is like what's happening right now.
I know stablecoins have it feels like the past few years, to your point, has become and maybe that's kind of what you're getting at, is like it started here, went through all these things, and now stablecoins have become a very prominent focal point. Is, I guess, coming to your day-to-day, week-to-week, and where you are kind of focusing your energy, like high level strategically, where the core inputs that you are putting in, that your team is putting in, what realm are you guys really trying to tackle? What sphere within the like, what are you guys really leaning into in this industry? Is it what you're talking about right now, or like take me to like, you know, the past few weeks, the past month, the upcoming few weeks? If you look at kind of where your time is allocated and the strategic deals you guys are working on, the clients that you're working on, what are those core problems that you guys are really focused on solving?
Yeah, and by the way, like on the stablecoin front, you know, it's so like just a good example, you know, because not everyone, especially in the U.S., I think like in the U.S. you don't have as many of those problems that I just described, right? But for example, like I just was in Brazil, landed in Rio. The first thing as you're walking down the escalator, you know, at the airport, Tether. You know, on your phone, everyone is transacting in this thing that is USDT, that, you know, the biggest stablecoin in the world. Because again, it's faster, it's cheaper, it's better. It also, again, we're kind of like going maybe a bit too deep here, but like it also gives you, you know, it gives you access to the dollar, right, which is the strongest currency in the world. You think about like hyperinflationary countries. Think about like Venezuela or Argentina, right, where inflation is like 90%.
Yeah. So
you get like paid in Argentinian pesos, and then like 24 hours later, it's worth like 50% less. Like that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, how do you prevent? Well, if you take that and you immediately put it into a dollar-pegged stablecoin, which you can hold globally, that's it, right? It's pegged to the dollar. You're holding dollars. Every person in the world wants to hold dollars, right? That's like, again, not so evident in the U.S., but anywhere else, dollar is the most expensive currency, the currency that everyone wants to hold.
A key to this too, that I think that where I would say traditional minds have like doubted or have taken their time to come around to this, is like, in concept it can make sense, but the counter is like, conceptually it can make sense, but it requires the adaptability. It requires the adoption.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can have all this stuff, but like if no one uses it, if we're not adopting to it, what's the point?
Yeah, no, 100%. And that kind of goes to your second question, which is like, what are we working on? It's a little bit of that, you know, like our technology, and we kind of use the slogan sometimes, like better money technology. Like we are sort of the infrastructure that enables a lot of this, and to drive basically that adoption, to drive, you know, like an example, one of the largest transactions that we've seen to date on the technology that is layer 0 was $800 million, one transaction, moving from one blockchain to another. Compare that to moving $800 million from like one bank to another bank. That is a traditional finance world. First of all, impossible. You know what I mean? No bank is going to let you transfer $800 million in the first place, right? Second of all, if they did, they're going to probably charge you $100,000 on that. Yeah. You know what I mean? To move $800 million. This happened in 36 seconds and cost $2.20, you know, to move $800 million worth of value. The point is like, so we're building like this type of technology that enables that. So the deals that you're referring to are like the companies that we work with, like PayPal's a great example. PayPal's one of our investors. We work with them very closely. You know, we power their stablecoin, for example, right? Or, you know, I think you saw most recently, we announced with the state of Wyoming issuing a government-issued stablecoin. So that is basically like, you know, issuing a new currency from a state government, and we're powering that currency across all these different systems, right? And so we're a little bit like, from a layer 0 perspective, really, we're kind of in behind the scenes, right? Like no one really knows that all of this is powered by our rails, but everyone is interacting with it, which is like a perfectly fine place for us to be, right? Like we are the rails, like, and at the end of the day, like even though it is about money in this case and payments and all that, like all it really is under the hood is just it's just information. It's just packets of data. That's all current like cryptocurrency is. It's bytes of data. And so like we often compare ourselves at like the very, very basic level to like the TCP/IP of the internet, right? Like we just move these blocks of information so you can stream your Netflix at home and watch Peaky Blinders and whatever that is, right? We kind of serve a similar purpose. We're just moving these packets around everywhere, sort of across the internet, and it results in the form of money movement.
So I want to switch gears a little bit. I'm curious, like I'm actually just personally curious. I've asked you sometimes before, but your schedule these days. I think I flew up. What's today? Friday. I flew up Wednesday night, and then you actually flew down to Miami, so I got a place to myself.
Second home.
Yes. But what with your schedule and how often you travel and the team and so on and so forth, how do you kind of think of and approach your like time management overall and all the shit that you have to do?
Yeah. By the way, we should think about a house swap sometimes.
I'm down. There we go.
Might need some sun in the winters.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, like like most of my friends, including you, joke about that, right? Like it's chaotic, maybe to some extent a little bit self-inflicted. Like there's probably stuff that I could, say no to. But first of all, I manage a global team, right? So
how many people?
22 across, Korea, Amsterdam, Dubai, the West Coast, New York.
How many managers are in place for those 22?
3
managers,
I think. Four. So that in itself is complicated because you're working all these different time zones, right? So obviously the normal US hours, but then like this morning, I was on the phone at 8 a.m. That's 8 p.m. Korea time, so I'm talking to et cetera. So that adds, its own level of complexity. And then there's obviously just loads of meetings on average, 16, 17 meetings a day. Like that is basically every day. And then you mix in the travel, right? Which is this industry in particular is very travel heavy, very conference heavy. Like
why? Just to connect people, to bring them together?
So I always, because like if you look at all these crypto conferences, man, it's like
isn't the same people there? Like
it's a lot of the same because it's not that big of an industry, right? But it's always in like the most exotic locations. And, it's like Miami, Bahamas, like Tokyo, Seoul, London, Cannes, France. You know what I mean? Like someone was like, "You're going to crypto conference in the southern coast of France," or like, "Boo-hoo."
Yeah.
But it's in these exotic locations, and there I think there's actually like maybe a different reason for that. But I realized a lot of these people are remote. A lot of these people are digital nomads. All over the world. They're living in tax havens like Lisbon and Puerto Rico and Dubai, right? Which means that when they're working, they're at home in one of these places, and then they 2 weeks later, they're like, wait, like I want to, like my social life is my crypto life, basically. So they all get together in all these conferences, basically. And I think that's basically the life that a lot of these, like, again, younger industry, right? So like way less likely maybe to have, a big family, et cetera. And, so very travel heavy, right? Like getting together in all these different places. It kind of, so when you have like a, 14-hour day and then you get on a flight and then you have another 14-hour day and you kind of keep, I think it kind of goes back to a little bit of like what you and I talked about in the beginning. It's just like thick skin, It's just like part of it. It's like the grind. It's also like fulfilling and motivational, and like you do feel like you're actually doing important things. I don't know how sustainable it is for like 20 years, but like the last 2 that I've been doing this very intensely, like I'm fine. Could I use some like sleep? Yes. Could I use some additional time to like read a book or like learn how to play golf, or maybe like go shoot some hoops?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, 100%. Like would love that. But I don't know. You just figure it out. Like it's
How do you think of that? Like the sacrifice of that, right? Like how do you think of the you're kind of in overdrive on this side, which again you speak incredibly highly of obviously your founders, your team, like etc., which makes it much easier. But yeah, like the sacrifice that comes with that. Is it something you consciously are like do you hit a wall and you're like, damn, I need to like adjust something here? Or yeah, what everything requires obviously sacrifice. So what's your thought process with it?
Yeah, I mean, look, like it definitely comes probably at the expense of some personal relationships, but not to the point where they like end. You know what I mean? Like they maybe just get like a little bit neglected.
Yeah.
Including maybe with even like, my family. My mom always jokes, she's like, been trying to call you for 3 weeks, like,
book on my calendar.
Phone. Yeah, it's like exactly, book a call, book a podcast, we can talk. And so it definitely neglects some of that. And the funny thing is like it's not necessarily like I'm busy, but I'm not like that busy that I can't call my mother. But all that stuff is so draining that if you do have the free time, like the last thing you want to do right now is like trying to catch up on like everything that you've just done in the past couple of weeks and whatever. Now you want to take that moment of silence that you have basically because you're so drained. So it does come like at the expense of that a little bit. But then then you course correct a little bit, and then you're like, okay, like I should probably like fly home and see the parents, or you and I haven't talked. I should probably like figure out a way to like give Sean a call for an hour so we can catch up. So you kind of just keep course correcting, and hopefully like you don't like neglect anything to the point where it's where it's like bad for the other person. And I think that the way that I've always kind of justified this, which is I think different, or at least I'm trying to do, I don't know, maybe this doesn't work out, but like I'm trying to work really hard now and make all these sacrifices now before I have a family, before I have kids. So by the time that I do, I have kind of the success and the financial freedom and all that to like not retire, but then be able to actually spend time with the family and kids rather than the other way around. Kind of, go. And then like you have a family and you have kids, and then you're like 44 and you're always on a plane and you're some CRO of some company or CEO, whatever that may be. And then you like neglect your family then, right? Kind of trying to do it the other way around. Like I want to squeeze in everything out while I'm young, while I can. Like I can sleep 6 hours or 5 hours and still be fine, etc. And then not to say that then when I'm 55, but like then when I'm like 38, I can kind of like relax a little bit.
What do you feel like today you are? I don't want to say the biggest things that keep you up at night, but like what do you think? Where do you feel like you're still struggling the most, or the things that you're still trying to figure out the most? And that could be like something personally, mindset, emotional. That could be something specific at work. That could be cracking the code for a specific team. But like when I ask you that question, like big hurdles, challenges that you're trying to navigate, the biggest ones you're trying to navigate today, what comes to mind?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it's probably going back to the question before this. I think it's just like the balance, like
uncertainty on if you have the right balance, or constantly trying to find more to grab more time into other areas.
I think into other areas, right? Like I learn a lot, for example, from what I'm doing, but I'm learning in some sort of one or two dimensions, right? Business, maybe the emerging tech, whatever that is. I have sort of this like thirst to do a lot more, learn a lot more. Like I think I told you like a while ago, I was like, I want to go to the London School of Economics and like spend some time on like getting my master's in economics, for example. That's like a thing that I would like to do. Like I want to learn a bunch of different things, and like right now I'm so short on time that I can't like do those things, let alone like go the fun things, right? Like that I mentioned earlier. So I think it's like figuring that out. Like I don't want to come out of this on the other end and like, okay, like I finally made the money and I'm like eyes drooping out of my face, and like I've 10 years later it's like, was it worth it? So I think like trying to find that balance a little bit.
And I guess to maybe to people that are either whether they're early in their career, out of college, didn't really go to college, or like trying to figure it out in their career, or they could be already in their 30s and aren't feel a little bit of a slave to their job, aren't loving what they're doing, aren't it's not like they're getting paid tremendously well or anything like that, and just feel kind of a little bleh and like stuck. What would be some insight that you would give for somebody like that?
I mean, like none of these things just come to you. Like you gotta go out. I mean, maybe obvious, but like you gotta go out. In fact, like there's a guy that I got on the phone with recently because he's the son of this person that I used to work with, and he just graduated from college. And, I guess to some extent, maybe he wanted a job. But more so he was like, well, like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I want to kind of like, I want to find like a good, well-funded company in like, kind of this area of crypto. And, like, I just don't know what to do. And I was like, okay, like that is like the least amount of effort, you know what I mean, that I've like ever seen in my life. And I was like, okay, let me like walk you through this a little bit, like, what do you like? What drives you? Like, what do you think you can do to like better position yourself, etc. There was like, it just, it felt like this conversation basically like, I'm just here waiting for someone to give me the dream job that I want. I'm like, that does not. That's not how life works. You know what I mean? You got to go out and get it. You got to try. You got to like put yourself in the best position possible. Like when I was in college, I was a part of like, every single club, taking the opportunities, like, and doing the entrepreneurship thing. Like it's there. The lifelines are there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that literally do that to give these lifelines to people, right? But like you got to go out and
get involved
and take all of them, right? Like when I graduated college, I had 5 job offers in New York. I hadn't even graduated yet, and it's because I spent 2 years of like the last 2 years of college, like very actively trying to take every lifeline, take every opportunity, meet people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so like for the people now, like you gotta put in the work. It's like that simple, to be honest, right? Like go meet all the people, don't wait for a handout, like do the networking, do the studying, like spend the extra, you talk about our friend Steven, right? Like spent the last 12 months like just learning AI, right? Like inside and out. You see some of the stuff that he's putting together, it's like pretty incredible, right? It's like really cool. But that's because he like sat there about a topic that he liked and like learned and learned and learned and learned, and like now he's doing his own thing with you on that. But like that's what it takes. You can't just like sit there and like, well, I graduated college, so like give me I'm waiting for my dream job.
It's always people always expect something to hear something magical, and it never is. It's always just the most simple, obvious things.
Work hard. Like that's really that's the answer, right?
What do you, some last closing questions here, what do you feel the most excitement around right now, whether that's a specific potential customer, whether that's a phase in the business, whether it's developing the team? Like when you think of, I don't know, the coming few quarters, like what gives you like this, like I'm fucking jazzed about this XYZ? I mean it probably is all about work, I guess, in this case. We're like right now, I think just like we as a company are at this like incredible inflection point. We've been building some tech for the past 2 years that no one knows about. Wow.
Most of our company doesn't know about it. We literally have a section of our headquarters like roped off basically where some of that development is happening.
Wow. Layer -1.
To the point where some of the people that are even working on it don't know what they're working on. It's like the iPhone at Apple. You know what I mean? Like people at Apple, 80% of the company didn't know that the iPhone was being worked on. And we're going to release it next year. And with that, there's a lot of opportunities, even about some of the meetings that I told you about, right? That we're positioning, and I think it's been a busy couple of years. The next 18 months will probably be like the busiest ever. So I don't know how we're gonna handle that, but like I'm incredibly excited for this. Like I'm being vague because I can't share the details, but I think spending the next 12 months on like actually getting this thing out to market, and like just completely, I think, exponentially growing the company and our business and the revenue and everything. Like it's gonna be a hell of a lot of fun.
Is it the sheer growth that drives the excitement for you? Is it the challenge? Is it like, what do you think's the underlying driver for you for that?
I think it's largely the challenge, I think, right? But it's also like it's fulfilling, right? Because we're working towards like this bigger thing that's gonna obviously make our company successful. It's gonna make every person within our company excited and successful, hopefully a little bit richer, and also like fundamentally change some of the ways that this industry works, right? And so I think most people, it's not just me, want to make impact, right? People often say when you work for a very big company, like they feel dissatisfied because they're not making like the most strategic impact, right? So like everyone wants to make impact, and I think like this is like very meaty, impactful stuff.
I like it. I don't know if I've actually ever asked you this question, but I ask everyone it. Obviously, don't have kids yet. It's a plan in the future. With all of the
An assumption.
I know it's a plan. Oh, it is part of the intention of the future. What is, when you think of all the things that guide how you move, how you think, how you operate, what you value, what is the most important principle you would say of all of these? What do you feel like is the most, if you had to choose one, the single most important principle that you would want to instill in your future kids?
I think, maybe this is a bit of a cop-out answer because it's literally like a quote on my LinkedIn. But there's a quote from Confucius that says, our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. In fact, my favorite NBA player, this was his whole mantra, Dwayne Wade, right? Fall down 6 times, get up 7. He had this whole thing, right? Because he used to fall a lot. He was like always like in his most crazy dunks, getting, fouled, etc. But it was always about like getting up. And I think that's stayed with me throughout. That Confucius quote is maybe a more, philosophical, kind of eloquent way of putting it. But I think it's that, right? It's like, and it's the same thread to pull on with the thick skin and, the ability to fail and to get back up and like not get rattled. The same, I think, applies. But like, if you had to take one principle, I think it's that. If you fall, get back up. No matter how many times you fall.
Yeah, love it. This is fun.
Yeah,
I'm glad. I'm here for a few more days. I think we'll get to hang out some more, but this was great.
You can flip it. I can do that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. No, dude, thanks a ton for this. This was awesome. Some new things that I heard as well, and I'm sure some value for anybody that does choose to chime in. So, yeah, brother, I appreciate it. Excited for the next one.
Of course. Thanks for having me.